The need for more mediation and conciliation in housing discrimination cases. A conversation with mediator and conciliator Marci Jordan. That is our topic for today. Welcome to the Lawyers and Mediators International Show and Podcast by InstantMediations.com, where we discuss law and conflict resolution topics to educate both professionals and everyday people. Catch regular episodes on YouTube, the Instant Mediations app, and anywhere you get your podcast. Just remember, nothing in these episodes constitutes legal advice, so be sure to talk to a lawyer, as cases are fact-dependent. Hey everyone, this is Mac Pierre-Louis, mediator, arbitrator, and attorney working throughout Florida and Texas.
And Natalia Ołowska-Czajka, advocate, mediator, and arbitrator from Warsaw, Poland. And it is our greatest pleasure to have with us today Marci Jordan, whom we met at the TAM conference, Texas Association of Mediators conference in 2002 in February in the Woodlands Resorts near Houston. And Marci, we would be talking about you endlessly, but it's best if you shortly present yourself to the audience, please.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. My name is Marci Jordan, as these two lovely hosts said. I work for the Texas Workforce Commission Civil Rights Division, and in that agency, we investigate, educate regarding housing and employment discrimination cases. We make sure that people understand their rights and responsibilities, especially in housing, to make sure that you have these creature comforts, which is a house, that it is working properly. If you need any type of accommodations, that it is accommodated to fit any type of needs, and that if you're looking for a home, that you're treated equitably and fairly, and you're not steered to certain areas or better fits because of race, color, national origin, or familiar status. So I do a whole lot. And also, when people bring issues to me, I am the one that gets to sit down with both parties to either mediate or conciliate. So I do a
And
whole lot.
Marci, thank you so much for that. And you both work for the government, but at the same time, you also do your own business, correct?
That,
So
that is
you're
correct.
you're speaking from the capacity not as some official state or representative right now, but you're
No,
speaking from your private capacity, correct?
that is correct. I have a lot of knowledge, and with that knowledge, I decided to do HR consulting, which is a very, very serious need that makes sure that small businesses have the correct and accurate information for their employers so their employers can be happy and satisfied in their job. And if anything comes about, then the employees know what they need to do and the employers know their responsibilities.
Yeah.
So
And
do it quite a bit.
before I let Natalia take over to ask you some questions about the housing discrimination side,
Mhm.
wanted to just share your website real quick by screen sharing it. So if you're listening to the podcast, you can definitely go watch the YouTube version of this video and check out. But this is jordanhrconsultants.com. And can you tell us a little bit more about the services that you provide?
Okay, my company, I found it was a need during many of my mediations that I handle employment discrimination, that a lot of cases were based on either inadequate or non-existing HR personnel and staff. They would hire somebody, they would do the HR, and they would find out that they didn't understand the recruiting practices, what they can and cannot do when they're recruiting, as well as pay, hiring, handle investigations if there's an issue that take place during the work time that they're there, as well as offboarding. I also do employment investigations, so I'm a neutral third party that would come in and be able to investigate any claims of discrimination and write up a detailed report to present to them, either hopefully mediation, but sometimes it is litigation. Besides, of course, I got to do and follow my first love, which is mediating. So I do mediate and arbitrate. So I do a lot in my business as well.
And this is why it is such a pleasure to have you. And I wanted to say that we also have a special occasion for that because this is April. is
Mm-hmm.
National Fair Housing Month,
That is
and
correct.
it is being celebrated also within your governmental capacity. And please tell us something more about it.
Uh,
Why is it so important? Why do we celebrate National
uh,
Fair Housing Month?
okay. The opportunity arose to do fair housing is to educate individuals that's either leasing an apartment, leasing a house, wanting to buy a house, mortgage companies, appraisers, real estate agents, to make sure everybody understand housing is a necessary creature comfort, and as well to make sure that everybody is treated accurately and fairly under the Civil Rights Act of 1964. So this is where HUD and the Fair Housing comes in under. So Fair Housing Month is just basically outreach and education to the general public, as well as anybody that owns a home that wants to rent out a home, or apartment complex owners, property managers, as well, to make sure everybody is on the same page to do the right thing for everybody that's involved. So, Fair Housing Month is very, very important and crucial because with the pandemic, we found a lot of people have been impacted because of housing. Either they weren't able to pay their rent, their mortgage, because of there's companies either furloughing people or laying off people. And so the government did provide, subsidies to help people pay their rent, their mortgage, basically, a lot of different things. And now, since the pandemic finally is slowing down, we're seeing a lot of different cases pop up in regards to, like, property managers and owners received a lot of money from the government to assist in rental assistance for their tenants, but we're seeing more and more stories of these property managers did not take care of the rent. And now these people are being impacted in the form of, you didn't pay your rent. Now they're being evicted. And there was recently one case that I just read about last night where the property manager received $11,000 for this in particular tenant, and he got evicted. And after he got evicted, he started digging around and found out the property manager received all this money to take care of his rent and did not apply it accordingly. So you hear sad stories like that. Or now with the moratorium lifted on evictions, people now are dealing with, I got evicted. How do I navigate this system? Or there's an eviction pending. What do I do? Because with the evictions, and it makes it to rent a house, rent an apartment, as well, it can impact your ability to purchase a home. And we have found out the biggest group of people that are impacted by the evictions is minorities and disabled, because those are the biggest categories that are affected. So we are looking at more and more of those cases, as well as disability cases, which people don't think about disability, but because of the pandemic and everybody being stressed and people having all different types of stress issues or physical issues, the need for either emotional support animals or service animals. How do they navigate the system? What do they need to do? What kind of documentation do they need to get from their therapist or their doctor to present to the apartment complex so they can have these different types of animals? Or accommodations in a home, such as raising the level of their cabinets, removing carpet because they have trouble walking, maybe grab bars in the bathroom to make sure that they don't fall in the shower, different things like that. So we're seeing more and more of these cases. But the good thing is we have a lot of people that are dedicated to handle these situations, educate these situations, and make people accountable when they do wrong. So part of it is where I come in is I conciliate and mediate. So hopefully these are the issues that we can handle. Everybody's on the same page. We can get a resolution without going to court, because our agency that I work for can go to court, and we will take people to court. And we have prevailed on many court cases of just either subtle discrimination or just blatant discrimination.
So,
So
Marcy,
hopefully, that is the case.
Yeah. So typically, what does a typical mediation look like? And before you answer that, the
Hmm.
heart of the question today is that there is a need for more mediation and more
Yes.
conciliation, and partly because
Yes.
of what you described, that
Hmm.
this thing is seems to be blowing up, especially after the pandemic. But what does typically a mediation look like, and how does it come to you, and then what happens?
Okay. With the agency I work for, I get assigned a case. The investigator, the way the investigation department works, the investigator is assigned the case. They start the investigation. If both parties want to come to the table and sit down, that's where I take it, I come in, and we will do either a mediation, a formal mediation where both parties get together, whether it's telephonic or Zoom, or I'm doing conciliation. I'm just going back and forth between the parties, going, this is what the complainant wants, what can you do to hopefully rectify the situation before it gets to the point of we determine there is a cause finding, and then litigation or an administrative hearing comes into play. So typical mediation is pretty much the same, but it's unique because when you do housing discrimination mediations, you must be fully understanding of the law. How is it applicable to this case? And how can we rectify the situation where hopefully it won't happen again? So it's pretty much the same, but it's a little bit unique because you come in with the knowledge of knowing what happened with the case, knowing the law, also looking at remedies, not just to satisfy the person that's been harmed, but we also look at public interest. And what public interest is, how does it affect the collective and whole, such as training for the property managers, property owners, posting signs around the apartment complex, letting people know if you got an issue, going to the apartment office to say, hey, look, I need XYZ. Also, making sure that they fully understand with disabilities. What is considered to be a disability? What kind of questions they can and cannot ask? What kind of documentation do they need? And understanding if you have an emotional support animal or a service animal, those are working animals. They're not pets, they're animals. And how to go about, no, you can't charge them a, and everybody's understanding of what all this takes. So that's the public interest, besides making sure that the individual that's harmed get an opportunity to speak and let them know how they feel like they've been harmed. So it's really, really important in those type of situations to allow the person to speak, because they do have something to say and they feel like they have not had a voice to talk about these issues. And this is a perfect place to have them to be able to talk about it, because it's a safe environment. There's no retaliation, and they feel like they're being in control of the situation and control of the resolution. So it's unique. I've shed tears without people knowing about some of the heartbreaking cases, but also hugs and congratulations, we got it done, and one less thing to deal with. So it's unique, it's different, and I would not trade it for the world.
And tell us, please, what sort of cases, like I understand that
Mhm,
it is all confidential, but maybe to make our audience more aware, what sort of cases have you encountered that were
mhm.
difficult, but that got their happy end in mediation and happy ever after, after finding a solution that was acceptable to both parties?
Okay. One case that I can recall, this lady, she had custody of her grandson, and she had gotten into a really bad car accident and broke her neck. She was able to move around, but she needed assistance. And with housing cases, you are allowed to have live in help, and they don't go on the lease. There is something totally different. And the apartment complex did not understand that when you have live in help, they follow different guidelines than somebody applying for an apartment. And she did receive a subsidized rent in the form of a housing voucher, or some people refer to as Section 8. So this was a situation where she was denied assistance to live in her home, to help her out and help her with the daily functions of cooking, cleaning, taking her to the store and everything. So those were one of the situations where she just felt really, really hopeless. And she had asked for help and asked for help, and they just blatantly told her, no, there's nothing we can do. So when I came in and we sat down and we discussed it, I had to educate the apartment complex that look, she is entitled to receive assistance. That assistance is able to live in. That is state and federal law, and you cannot deny her. If she got the proper documentation from her doctor or therapist saying that this is a needed accommodations, then you can't deny her unless it's considered to be an undue hardship. And undue hardships are it's costly or you have to change rules, regulations, or policy. In this situation, the policy was already there. She had the apartment to accommodate additional people living there. She had the documentation, and they just really did not understand it. So it took a lot of finessing and a lot of explaining. This is the law. This is how it is. She did put in a proper request. We got to get this resolved because if not, this case is going to litigation. And once we file a charge of discrimination, it's public. It is
Um,
a public record,
Marcy,
and you don't want that.
yes, no, just a few minutes left. I
Mhm,
was gonna say, so how does the landlord or the tenant, I'm sorry, how does the landlord or the
uh-huh,
homeowner
mhm,
uh, trust that you're going to be neutral? Because if you're an arbitrator,
mhm.
if you're an arbitrator or a mediator, if
Right.
you're somebody who's trying to help both sides come and have an
Mhm,
agreement and stay out of court,
right.
because some of the what you just said a second ago almost sounded like you might be advocating for the tenant who was being discriminated against because she
Right.
wasn't able to get her live-in help. So how
Right.
does the landlord trust that you'll be able to give them a fair hearing as
Right.
well?
Well, in those types of cases where it's very close to being decided that it is a charge of discrimination, the property owner already has a good understanding that if we don't get this resolved, there will be a charge filed. So it's in their best interest to sit down and not only sit down and work it out, but to receive an education. So in my mediations, it's not just, okay, fine, what are we going to do? How are we going to get it done? But explaining what the law is, the resources they can find to make sure that they fully understand it. They understand exactly what I'm saying because I'm not quoting anything different other than the law, and that this is a good opportunity to have a learning experience and also for us as an agency to assist you additionally with any questions that you may have, any type of training. So we let them know I'm not advocating for the person that was harmed or the alleged harm. I'm not advocating for the property manager. I am advocating for the law and the system and work making sure that it works to both parties' benefits. Now, we do have cases where complainants are in the wrong, and I have to tell the complainants, no, that's not the law. And in this case, I am slightly advocating for the property manager to let them know, no, this is not the case. But please understand, this is one individual. It doesn't describe the collective, and what you're doing is right. Trust the system. And if you have any questions about the system, then trust the agency that we're going to guide you and give you the accurate and correct information. So it's a little precarious, but like I said, I wouldn't trade it for the world.
Yep.
And just very briefly, because we are now wanting to close very shortly, can you tell us what sort of discrimination have you encountered? Just listing the things that people can go and try and find you. And let me make one very big remark.
Mm-hmm,
Because it is a matter of federal law, as I understand,
mm-hmm.
it is the same throughout the entire states of America,
Yes,
United States of America. So
yes.
anybody who is suffering from that or allegedly has any problems with it can actually um, direct themselves to you, even though
Mm-hmm,
you are based in Texas. So
mm-hmm.
can you tell us what sort of discrimination have you encountered?
I've seen sexual harassment where it's a single mother and children, and the property manager says, hey, look, I'll fix your XYZ or I won't raise your rent in exchange for da 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 da. Da. So I've seen those. I have seen situations where people were denied accommodations. Like it took them a long time to get grab bars in the bathroom. One case, the lady needed her toilet raised because of a disability. It took them about 5 or 6 months to rectify that situation. I have seen situations where people were not treated fairly in regards to mortgages. They were charged a higher interest rate. We haven't received anything as of yet, but we do know it's coming. The wrong evictions. Why were this person evicted compared to this other person? And we're finding those, as well as race discrimination on how they handle repairing items or even getting into an apartment. And there's situations where the the wife was of one race. She went, looked at the apartment, said it's wonderful, great, fantastic, I want to bring my husband back. Brought her husband, he was of a different race, and then they told her she was going to have to pay 3 times the amount in the deposit compared to before, when they just saw her, she just had to pay 1 time's rent. So we've seen different things like that. We are hearing about appraisals where African Americans or other minorities, their homes are being appraised a lot less than others in the community because they identify, well, this is a minority, and where people have actually moved pictures and anything that would give any indication of what race they are, and find out their appraisal all of a sudden went up a couple of $100, a couple of $100,000. So we're seeing and reading about cases like these. So um, there's a need out there. And these are cases either we're hearing about or I've actually witnessed, and it is wrong. It is so, so wrong. And, I'm one of these persons that advocate for everybody needs to be treated fairly. So when I see things like that, yes, it does make my blood boil, but it comes down to, do the person understand, the property manager understand what they're doing is wrong, and letting the person that's been harmed, this is a place to let us handle the situation. Don't take certain measures in your hand. Come to us. We have the ability to rectify the situation. So,
Awesome. Thank you so much, Marcy. There's so much that could be said further
yes.
about housing discrimination that we want to have
Mm,
you back on another
thank
topic,
you.
of course.
Thank
And
you.
so, folks who are interested in this topic, stay tuned. Check out the podcast for more and on smediations.com. And so, with that, signing out, this is Mac Pierre Louis, attorney mediator.
Natalia Łowska-Czajka and
Marci Jordan.
All right. All right, guys. Until next time, thanks so much for joining us. Take care.